Procedure for hypothesis testing. Testing a hypothesis refers to verifying whether the hypothesis is valid or not. Hypothesis testing attempts to check whether to accept or not to accept the null hypothesis. The procedure of hypothesis testing includes all the steps that a researcher undertakes for making a choice between two alternative actions of rejecting or accepting a null hypothesis. Making a formal statement. This step involves making a formal statement of null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. This implies that the hypothesis should be clearly stated within the purview of the research problem. For example, suppose a school teacher wants to test the understanding capacity of the students, which must be rated more than 90% in terms of mark. The hypothesis may be stated as null hypothesis equal to 100 and alternative hypothesis greater than 100. Selecting a significance level. The hypothesis should be tested on a predetermined level of significance which should be specified. Usually, either 5% level or 1% level is considered for the purpose. The factors that determine the level of significance are the magnitude of difference between sample means, the sample size, the variability of measurements within samples, and whether the hypothesis is directional or non-directional. In sum, the level of significance should be sufficient in the context of nature and purpose of inquiry. Then, deciding the distribution to use. After making a decision on the level of significance for hypothesis testing, the researcher has to next determine the appropriate sampling distribution. The choice to be made generally relates to normal distribution and the t-distribution. The rules governing the selection of correct distribution are similar to the ones already discussed with respect to estimation. Then, selection of a random sample and computing an appropriate value. Another step involved in hypothesis testing is the selection of random sample and then computing a suitable value from the sample data relating to test static by using the appropriate distribution. In other words, it involves drawing a sample for furnishing empirical data. Then, calculation of the probability. The next step for the researcher is to calculate the probability that the sample result should diverge as far as it can from expectation under a situation when the null hypothesis is actually true. Then, comparing the probability. Another step involved consists of making a comparison of probability calculated with a specified value of alpha, that is the level of significance. If the calculated probability works out to be equal, smaller than the alpha value in case of one-tailed test, then the null hypothesis is to be rejected. On the other hand, if the calculated probability is greater than, then the null hypothesis is to be accepted. In case the null hypothesis is rejected, the researcher runs the risk of committing the type 1 error. But if the null hypothesis is accepted, then it involves some risk of committing the type 2 error. Thank you.